Welcome to Membership Voice. I'm Kero O'Shea, the coordinator of the Voice and the host for this evening's webinar. A very special welcome to tonight's presenter, Area Governor Paul Elsley from the Rotary Kingston in Ontario, Canada, District 7040. Hey, Paul, how are you?
I'm doing great today.
Fantastic. That's great. But before we go any further, it's important for me at this stage to acknowledge the Whadjuk people of the Noongar Nation, who are the traditional custodians of the land on which I'm hosting tonight's webinar. I acknowledge the strength of their continuing culture and offer my respects to elders past, present and emerging. But now for tonight's presentation, I'm really keen to hear this because, as we all know, the part one of Kingston nearly a year and a half ago now, we learnt some wonderful outcomes Paul's club and cluster had from the work they'd done, and now there's even more good news. So over to you, please, Paul, for sustained membership growth, the Kingston model.
Thanks very much, Carol, and it's great to be with all of you again here today. It's been interesting to watch what has unfolded in our area over the past 2.5 years after my presidential year 2 years ago, where we added 19 new members. Things have continued to tick along very nicely. And I must say, after that year, I was a little worried when I stepped down as president that things might not continue, but they have not only continued, but they have accelerated a little bit too. So in case you don't know, this is where we're based. You can see Kingston there on the map. We're right on the border with the United States, beautiful Lake Ontario, halfway between Toronto and Montreal. Kingston as a city is about 130,000 people. And in Kingston, we have 6 different Rotary clubs, 4 that are Rotary clubs and 2 that are Rotaract clubs, about 200 members in total, just over 200 members. And my club has been around for just over 100 years now. So we are one of the oldest clubs in our district. This is how things are looking in our district these days. I don't know whether you get something like this, but as the district membership chair, I get this from the zone folks who compile all of this data. And so every month I have an update on how things are going in the district. And you can see here that we've got 3 different graphs. We've got one that represents our historical pattern in our district, which has been ending with a net loss of members every year, as you can see. The green is a very modest goal for the district to increase by 1%. And the blue track, which is our track currently, tells us where things are at this point in time. And you can see my district is plus 40 members at this point. What I can tell you, though, is that of those 40 members, 25 of them have been added here in Kingston, and that's a net. All right, so take away your losses to this point in year and measure that against those that have joined. And so we are a net plus 40, and in Kingston alone, we occupy the bulk of those new members at 25. This is another document that I receive regularly, again, from the zone folks, and it's a membership worksheet. And what it does is that it points out over the past 4 years, what our attrition rate as a club has been, what our attraction rate has been. And the goal, of course, is to have attraction be significantly higher than the attrition rate. And one of the worries for me, still with my club, has been that we've had a fairly high attrition rate. It's still well within the margins as far as Rotary is concerned at 9.6%, but I would like to get it down under 5%. And that has been a real goal of our club this year. Our membership committee is very much focusing on engaging our members and reducing that attrition rate. And so this is the kind of document that you can likely receive, if you don't, from the zone folks who are compiling all of this data. So again, I want to come back to some of the things that we have done, the 5 key elements, if you will, that have led to our membership successes. Some of it has to do with strategic initiatives and establishing goals. Another has to do with your approach to attracting members to your club. How do you do it? What are the sort of key planks of that process? Looking at who we have in our club and the kinds of members in our club. Are there new types of members we could be attracting to our club? And so looking at some new approaches each year. This year, just as a for instance, and I'll come back to this, we've been looking at alumni, folks who were in our club who have left, and we've reached out to them, and we've been surprised at how many of them have said, yeah, I miss Rotary, I want to come back. We look very much at the induction and onboarding process. I think that's very important to do. And then, of course, having an excellent retention plan. So let's look at each of those. So in terms of membership strategy, it's really important to begin by setting annual goals. And, you know, your board and your president likely and Club Central has to establish those goals. And our goal this year was to go from 77 to 80. Another goal that we set was to be one of the top 5 districts in our zone in terms of membership growth. And so setting those goals, establishing a bar, setting a bar that you want to achieve, I think gives everybody some real focus to the initiative. One of the other key things that we like to do is make sure that our messaging is consistent and we're all speaking the same kind of language. So we talk a lot about service above self. We talk about building community. We talk about collaboration of all the members of our club and the friends of our club. And when I think when you're delivering that consistent messaging, those key words, it really helps to unite and focus everybody on the effort. Membership is something, and I'm sure you're all aware of this, that has to be a team effort. It's not one person's job to do this. It's not just your membership committee. It is your whole club that needs to get behind this. And if your whole club gets behind it, I guarantee you're going to have success. And so we are now at the point where all of our members are so excited about what's happening to our club that they want to be a part of it. They're bringing their friends to Rotary, encouraging them to join. And it's nice to see that kind of energy and enthusiasm that carries through the whole club. I've already indicated that it's very important for you to tap into the resources that are out there. If you need some help with new types of clubs, if you need some help with retention strategies, if you want to find out, your historical patterns, reach out to the folks at Zone and at RI, and even your district, if you've got a district membership committee, because those resources are very powerful. And sometimes it's just nice to hear somebody else say some of these things. And so if you don't do it yet, it's something that I have done over the last 2 years and I continue to do. If you reach out to those folks and take advantage of those resources, I think there's no need to reinvent the wheel, and it's not an overwhelming thing when these resources already exist. And consider different member types. There are lots of different options, and I think, have a classification analysis of your club. Are there any significant businesses or communities that aren't represented in your club? Are you looking to diversify your club in some fashion? What's your gender balance like? Well, what about age? Are you one of those aging clubs? Have a look at really take a close look at who is in your club, and I think it will identify some gaps that you might want to fill. The recruitment process has been a major shift in the way we do things in our club. 2 years ago, I would have told you that before I became president, I think it was a tendency in our club to be reactive. That is to say, wait for people to come to us. But there are so many people out there who don't understand Rotary or what it means to become a member or think it's an exclusive club that if you sit back and wait, they are not going to come. You've got to be very proactive. And so you want to go out there and you know, tell your stories. Let people know the great works of Rotary and how important service organizations are in our communities these days. So if you make that fundamental shift, a proactive approach as opposed to a reactive approach, I think that will set you on the right path. I think it's also important to really engage the members of your club in this cause. Membership has to be a priority. If you want to grow as a club, you've got to be regularly reinforcing those messages and telling your club members that we need your help. We need you to get behind this, and here are our strategies and our goals. We are regularly sending out through social media and through the traditional press stories about some of our projects, about some of our members. We had one just the other day. There was an article in the newspaper about one of our members who's a pilot for Hope Air, flying patients who can't afford to get to hospital treatments in Southern Ontario up in the north. A great story about him. And you know, Rotary was highly featured in that article. We're getting out our stories and telling everybody about Rotary. And so Rotary has become a household name in our community in a way that it had not before. We've also made a real effort to make our meetings dynamic. If you're going to bring somebody to a meeting, it better be worth their while. And so find some great guest speakers or have some elements of your meetings where you're, you know, you've got a key Rotary moment talking about one of the wonderful projects that you're doing. You know, make sure some of the things that you're doing your meeting involve having fun and everybody getting to know one another. If that kind of dynamic environment exists, I think if it's a first point of contact, it's going to help sell Rotary to those member candidates who are visiting. And one of the key things that we have done over the last 2 years since I last spoke is that we have reduced the number of our regular meetings and increased the number of our service opportunities. So on I would say at least once a month, instead of a Thursday lunchtime meeting, we create 2 or 3 different service opportunities at different times that week for our members to get involved. And a lot of the new members are looking for those service opportunities. They don't want the traditional Rotary model. They're looking for something different. Again, I think just thinking outside the box a little bit about who's in your club and who could be in your club will help you to find some gaps that exist that you can likely fill. So I talked about the classification analysis. We were missing fundraisers, and you know, we had trouble filling that director portfolio. And so we went out looking for people who were great at raising funds, not necessarily as their profession, but as sort of, I guess, a skill set that existed. And so we found 2 or 3 fundraisers. They are now leading our fundraising initiatives. And this year alone, we've been able to raise over $300,000, which is pretty impressive. But sometimes getting those people into your club can help to really build energy in a particular direction. We have reached out to a number of our community partners and said, why don't you consider joining our club? You know, we've developed a relationship with you, but we want to enhance that relationship. And so a number of our community partners are now also members in our club. We've added a number of corporate members too. We're now up to 4 corporate members. One, a seniors facility. We've just added our local police force as a corporate member. And so that's another option available to you. And one of our Kingston clubs has a category called Friends of Rotary. And so these are people that have been affiliated with them. They'll come to meetings, they'll get involved in some things they haven't joined. But usually what happens is that over a span of time, perhaps that year, they end up seeing the value of Rotary, and so they move from being a friend to an actual member. And I think it's essential that you make the induction process special. So there are a number of things that we do. The initial meeting, well, first of all, if someone is a member candidate and they are introduced to us, we have a one-on-one session with the president of the club. That sort of elevates its status, and the person recognizes that we're reaching out to them in a very serious and significant way. We talk about this as an investment in Rotary. If you're going to spend time developing member candidates and turning them into members, you want to make sure that you're doing it extremely well so that it's going to be successful. The last thing you want to do is admit somebody as a member and then have them leave within the first year or two. It's a real investment. The orientation session is something that's very important. We ask questions of the member candidates. What are you hoping to gain from this experience? We want to make sure that we're providing a value proposition for that individual member. What are they hoping to get out of the experience? We make it very clear from the outset of what the responsibilities of members are. We don't want anything to catch them by surprise. And I think if at the front door you're very clear and you understand their expectations, there's a greater likelihood of success. We send out a notice to all the club members in advance of the induction of a new member and generate a real bit of excitement about it all. And I think that helps a lot. And then we make it the highlight of the meeting. So after our land acknowledgement and our Rotary reflection, the first thing we do is induct a new member. And it's about a 5-minute process that we go through. We have our club historian talk a little about our club. We have the president say a few words. We have the membership chair, the chair of the membership committee say a few words. We have a recent new member talk about what your path is going to look like potentially over the next 3 to 6 months. And then everybody is sending nice warm thoughts into the chat room or meeting with the new member in person at the end of the meeting at the back of the room in order to make them feel very, very special. And then finally, as I like to say, all clubs lose members for a variety of reasons, but you need to know what those reasons are. Is there something we could have done to change that when somebody leaves? If somebody moves out of the area, there's not much you can do other than to introduce them to a club in that new area. But you want to really work carefully at or look carefully at why people are leaving your club. We have fireside chats with new members, and that's a small, intimate session with the mentor and the new member and a few other key people in the club to get to know those new members and to tell the stories of the veteran members so they understand, again, what that experience could look like. There are lots of learning opportunities that we present to our new members, whether it's bringing them along to a district conference or attending a DEI session that the district is putting on. Lots of things like that, and providing them or showing them the RI website and some of the things that they could do on their own time to learn more about Rotary and understand how it works. As I said, we've got mentors for all of our new members, and our membership committee works very carefully with those mentors to make sure that we're touching regularly our new members and making sure that they are engaged. And we've also got a member care committee who will reach out to folks if they're going through some hard times, perhaps an illness or an injury, something that has happened. So we've got a number of different groups that are regularly connecting with the new members to make them feel engaged and a part of that family. And any host of engagement strategies. As I said, we've made this real shift to having service opportunities that have been very attractive for new members. And those are the kinds of things I think that can make a real difference in keeping people in your clubs. So I'm happy to entertain, I'm going to stop sharing here now. I'm happy to entertain any questions that you might have.
Well, I know we have one from Michael regarding an acronym there. So over to you, please, Michael.
Paul, thank you so much, Kero. Thank you for allowing me to ask the question. Those pieces of wisdom. I'm typing vigorously away there because they're absolutely phenomenal pieces of wisdom there, and I think each one of them is gold. In one of your earlier slides, I think it was under membership strategies, it talks about taps into district resources, and I've never heard of METS, METS. What is METS?
Membership. So it's specifically referring to our the district membership committee.
Right.
And we have training sessions, the TS membership training sessions that we hold monthly. And so, there are a lot of clubs I find that are happy to sort of live within their own little cocoon, but they don't look outside of that to see what resources are out there that could help them change their membership trajectory. And it's not something that you have to invent yourself. There are so many resources at RI, district, and zone, and it's a matter of reaching out and finding those. And I think we've had a real shift in our area of moving from telling Rotarians what to do to supporting them in what they would like to do. And hopefully that shift has happened in your area too.
Thank you.
Paul, 2 years ago, you told us about the remarkable collaboration between the 6 clubs in the city of Kingston that had seen all 6 go from declining to growing during that particular year because of the very sophisticated way they went about ensuring that they optimised everything to suit the cluster, particularly in terms of membership. How is that side of things going?
It's still going very well. So if you recall, we created a website and coordinate our social media for all 6 clubs through a central portal. That is to say, if somebody is in Kingston and they're interested in finding out about Rotary, we take them to a main site first, rotaryinkingston.cool. And from there, they can be put in touch with each and all of the clubs. So normally that person would come to me first, and I would have an interview with them and get to know them a little bit. And then I would tell them about all of the clubs. And so it's about making sure that it's a good fit. Our club has grown in size, but so have the other clubs. And they benefited from the same kind of energy that's going on. One of the other things we do is we have a Kingston membership team. So the membership leads in each of the clubs work closely together on membership strategies and again, getting messages out into the community. One of the key parts of collaboration as well is with respect to service events and projects. We often will work together on a major event or initiative that's happening in the city of Kingston to really highlight what Rotary is doing in the community. And I think that spirit of collaboration is a tremendous benefit because each club doesn't have to do it on their own. If you're all working together, all clubs are going to benefit from the experience. And so, as I mentioned, 25 out of the net 40 increase is happening here in Kingston. All 8 clubs are either at the level they were at on July 1st, 2022, at the beginning of the Rotary year, or they've seen an increase in membership. None of them are declining at this point in time. And so Kingston is sort of held up as the model within our district as to how to do things. And collaboration is a big part of that.
It's quite amazing. But anyway, we have a question about strategy from Glenda.
I've so missed this, Kero. I really have. I'm glad we're all back. You said initially, Paul, thank you, that to develop a successful membership strategy. I've been around Rotary long enough to know that a lot of clubs don't know what a strategy is, how to put one together. And I'm being brutally honest because that's what I am. What were the key things that you would put into your strategy document?
Well, so this I think that the change in our processes started with our centennial year. And so, we began meeting about 3 years before our centennial and looked at how we were going to approach it and what we wanted to achieve. And so it was important for us to have a strategic vision before we went into it, to have 3 or 4, not too many, 3 or 4 very important goals that would help us or help provide us with direction. So just as a for instance, we had what I consider to be a gender imbalance in our club. We had, I think at the time, about 26% of our members were female. We're now up to 44%.
Oh, wow.
And that's been one of our strategic goals. And one of the reasons for doing that, I think it's healthy for clubs to have a gender balance. But we found that most of the people who were leading our club, who had lots of energy, had great ideas, were not of the male persuasion. And so it's time for the ladies to take over things. That's my personal opinion. And so
Lovely to hear that.
one of our goals was to make sure that happened. And so that was a strategic goal. But we also wanted, as all clubs do, most clubs are aging out. Our average age 4 years ago, I think, was 66, and it's now down to 62. We're moving in the right direction, at least, but we've added a number of members in their 20s, 30s, and 40s. And so, again, 3 or 4, not too many, strategic goals like that directed specifically at membership has to be part of the plan. What are you hoping to achieve with your membership? Don't just add folks. Have a very strategic vision of how your club can be a better club by virtue of the kinds of members that you bring into it.
One of the things that the club that I'm currently with, so I've moved to regional Victoria, and it's the same up here as it is down in Melbourne. And one of the things that we've talked about just recently is, if you had to start a club again tomorrow, what would you do?
Mm-hmm.
And
that's a good question. Yeah.
If you were to compare that to how your club originally started, with not being any disrespect to the clubs that are 100 years or more or younger, but tomorrow's club is so different to yesterday's. And that thought process is very difficult for a lot of older Rotarians to take on board. So
absolutely. We have some members in our club. We call them the attendance police. As far as they're concerned, it's about attending every single meeting each week. It's about ticking that box as opposed to looking at what the new members are hoping to get out of the experience. And I've been very happy with the shift I've seen at RI to open the door to new possibilities and new directions. And I think it's going to take some time, and you will have the old guard in your club who think, meetings have to happen in person and people have to attend meetings every week. We've still got some of those, but the culture needs to shift.
Fantastic. Thank you, Glenda, and thank you, Paul. Paul, do you find that with this momentum of the regular arrival of new members and the excitement around the room, that actually encourages members, particularly the new ones, to bring more friends into Rotary?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, there's no doubt about it. When they see the energy that the new members bring, I think it gets them excited too. And so, it's not uncommon at all now for our members who might not have been inclined to do so. They'll bring friends. We just had one of our members last week who brought somebody who had been a Rotarian back in the day in another club. But he said, "Hey, come and check us out. We're doing some pretty cool things." And so last week we inducted him as a new member. We've reached out to a lot of former Rotarians recently and added 5 of them back to our club because they had been hearing about all the wonderful things that Rotary's been doing in the community to help build community knowing how important service organizations are, and they've come back to us. So I think there's a lot of good momentum that way, but we've taken it to even a higher level than that. I'm now getting people who are reaching out to us simply by virtue of hearing the stories. They've no connection to Rotary at all, but maybe they're recently retired to the city of Kingston. We are growing in that demographic, and they want to give back to the community, and so they hear stories about Rotary, and in my inbox I get this note from so and so that says, I know nothing about Rotary, but I'm hearing some good stories, and I want to be a part of it. What do I need to do? And that's the sort of the level that we've gotten to now, where we don't have to work very hard. Well, that's because we've done all the hard work already, I guess. But we've got people coming to us on a fairly regular basis. It's not a week goes by when I don't have an inquiry.
Fantastic. Tim Blackburn has a question.
I've just got a question. It's more to do with a reflection of our club. Our club is a lunchtime club, and I've invited quite a few of my friends along to come to and have a look at the club, and the feedback I'm getting from them is that it's because the majority of our meetings are lunchtimes. It's really hard for them to really dedicate a pocket of time, because often it's only a 1 hour meeting, but you've got the time getting there, time away. And and often with business commitments these days, I get a sense people don't have the time they used to have to commit to this type of event. So we're designing some meetings that's in the evenings as well. But when members see that, 2 or 3 meetings lunchtimes, they sort of don't join because the majority of the meetings are lunch times. So and then when we run the proposition to our existing members, like I said, a lot of them have been there 20, 30 years, who this is the way it's done. Changing that protocol is challenging. So whether we just have to bite the bullet and say, look, this is what do we go with what guests are telling us to do, or do we keep going the same and just keep varying up the agenda?
Yeah, it's a shift in culture. There's no doubt about it. And I'm a lunchtime club as well. We have hybrid meetings, and we're not going to turn away from that. We're not going to go back to full in-person meetings. And so, we encourage some of those new members who have very busy business lives, and especially with the younger professionals, pop in for 10 minutes, whatever time you can spare, just so that you're connecting for part of the meeting. Or you're on a committee, so the committees tend to meet at different times than over the lunch. So you can be engaged that way. You can be engaged by attending fellowship events. You can be engaged by getting involved in a project or a service activity. And typically those happen at different times. And I would say at least once a month now, we do not have a lunchtime meeting, because we're meeting in some other fashion. And part of that is to accommodate some of those new members with very busy business and family lives.
Thank you, Paul, and thank you, Tim. Paul, I've got something past you there. One of the things that we're doing as part of our I Think I Can initiative in Western Australia is starting to launch the concept that a traditional club, can actually have things like passport members and e-members and whatever, where, for example, you might have a member or a cluster within a club, or a focus team within a club, who actually might only come to a meeting once every couple of months because their focus is on doing things. And we're actually factoring in those different types of members. Is that what you were talking about when you talked about different types of members?
Yeah, that's certainly a big part of it. What are those members hoping to get out of the experience? They might be particularly attracted to the environment, for instance. So we've got an environment committee. And so their Rotary experience tends to revolve around that committee and their activities, as opposed to the more traditional path of a Rotarian 5, 10, 15 years ago. So yeah, absolutely. That is a big part of it. It is It's looking at, those interests. What are the interests? And especially in a club of now our size, we're up to 90. And there are lots of clusters like that. Some folks are really keen on being involved in exchange, either a host family or, helping with the exchange students that are in our club. The environment, there are lots of different clusters within the club. And so have a look at those clusters and take advantage of it.
With your cluster collaboration in Kingston, do you actually encourage members of, say, one club to take part in other clubs' service work?
All the time. And some of our service activities are very large. They require the collaboration of all the clubs if they're going to happen. So just to give you one example, we've got a fall fair that happens in September. And the fall fair was struggling with getting enough volunteers. And so they reached out to Rotary and said, would you take over the volunteer commitments that are needed for the fall fair? And so, we had 80 Rotarians from all of our clubs involved in the various volunteer activities that were happening at the fair. Happened to turn into a $20,000 fundraiser for us as well, which was quite a nice benefit. But what I hear from the members of the other clubs is that it was so nice to get to meet somebody from one of the other clubs. And it's not uncommon for us to attend other meetings, to encourage member candidates to look at the other clubs if they might be a better fit. I think that spirit of collaboration has been a very important part of our success.
Fantastic. I mean, the philosophy that goes with that, I Think I Can initiative, is to emphasise that the members own the club. The club doesn't own the members, which was always the traditional approach, and poaching and all that sort of stuff. And we're turning that on its head slowly. It's slower in some places than others. But what part say you're an area governor, and I know you're a very progressive one, but it does seem that Kingston is a standout in your district. What's happening in terms of spreading the good news across the rest of District 7040?
Yeah, everybody in the district is talking about the Kingston model. So the city of Ottawa, the clubs in the Ottawa area have embraced a lot of the things that we have done. Montreal's a little slower on the uptake, but I think a lot of folk, we are regularly speaking to other clubs in the district, and we are getting involved at the district level like I am to help spread the word, not just spreading it in our district, but spreading it as we are here outside of the district as well, because I think it's important for us to share these success stories in order to understand that traditional clubs need not die. I think there are lots of things that can happen with traditional clubs to shift the culture and change the membership trajectory.
You think that if we shifted the focus, as part of the I Think I Can initiative, from looking internally to working out what's relevant out in the community and going for that and growing our service output, if you like, to the community in very relevant ways, that would drive this even better?
Yes, absolutely. Many of our new members want that kind of an experience. That's what they're hoping to get out of Rotary. And so I think shifting your culture from a less traditional to embracing a lot of those service type initiatives is going to lead to membership success. It's going to keep those folks in the club because that's what they're hoping to get out of the Rotary experience.
Fantastic. Glenda Bryson has a question.
I'm back, Caro. I love this. You made a couple of points. My hand's gone. Thank you. A couple of points. I actually, when I moved to regional Victoria, I didn't know which club I was going to join. There's 5 clubs up here, and I went to not every one of them, but I went to quite a few of them, and I was helping out at that barbecue or helping out at that event. I joined the oldest club in maybe for the wrong reason. I don't know that I'm 100% fit to that club. And you made a good point where you said that not always will, you've got to, it's an important concept that another club might be a better fit to that new member. And it's not a failure to the club that, you know, brought that member in or whatever. It is literally, they might not fit for a variety of reasons, be it age, be it demographic, be it gender, be it whatever, but Rotary wins. And so long as you can keep that connectivity going with that person, that is very terribly important. The other thing that tonight in Melbourne, there were actually, it's Western, oh no, it was Melbourne. There was an ESRAG, and I don't know if everybody understands what ESRAG Oceania is. It's the Environmental Sustainability Rotary Action Group. Get that out when you're having a drink. And they had a thing on tonight that I couldn't be at everything, and I have asked if it's been recorded, because the Rotary Clubs of Geelong, which is down the coast, not coast, but down the other side of Melbourne, and again multiple clubs in a district, got together and they partnered with the local council to support the environment. So that's again, thinking outside the box of completely different ways of collaborating, helping the environment, and potentially getting new members as well. So I just thought I'd share those ones with everybody. Hero, go on.
Yeah, that's a great thought. You know, the collaboration is not just necessarily with Rotary clubs and being open to fits and so on, but it's about collaborating with other service organizations in your communities. It's about collaborating with other community organizations. You know, we've got an organization called Pathways to Education. These are kids that struggle in high school, and Pathways helps them get to the point of graduation. And many of them are attending post-secondary institutions for the first time in their family's history. So we work closely with them. You know, all the Rotary clubs are getting together to help them with their graduation ceremony and so on. So there are so many different ways to partner that are relevant in your community. And if you reach out to those organizations, many of whom you already have a relationship with, I think you'll find that it can really help to build and strengthen Rotary in the community.
Super. Thanks, Glenda, and thanks, Paul. Paul, coming back to something that we have discussed previously, I think it was implicit in what you said, but I just need to test it. One of the things that we have found through our best practice models here in Zone 8 is that there's a strong correlation between good new member education, in other words, opening up to the new member all the goodies that are available within the Rotary movement. How strong an emphasis do you place on, say, the next layer of education beyond induction and orientation?
It's a good point, Carol. So we use what we call Rotary moments. It's usually a 5-minute segment within our meetings to highlight those learning opportunities. So it might be the International Committee talking about what the International Committee does and what projects they're involved in. It might be, you know, any one of our other committees. So we try and highlight those kinds of things on a very regular basis so that, you know, the new members know what opportunities exist, right? Otherwise, you know, they're not going to know these things. So you've got to regularly highlight that. And again, it's about telling those great Rotary stories. It generates some real excitement.
Tell me about the impact of those new members on the existing Kingston member group, please.
Yeah, I mentioned to you that we brought in some fundraisers. We have been struggling with our traditional fundraisers, and bringing in the new people brought in great new ideas, you know, things that we likely never would have thought of. And so our fundraising success has really multiplied because of those new ideas and the new folks. And once people see that those new ideas can lead to direct and wonderful successes for the club, they buy in pretty quickly.
So you haven't had any issues with people feeling that they're not being cared for, to use Jennifer's term?
No, I don't think so. I think that, between our member care committee, our mentors, our membership committee, we've got a number of people in our club who are regularly looking out. If we see that somebody hasn't been engaged over the last couple of months, we reach out to them and find out what's going on. Is there anything we can do to help? Is it about the experience or just about your commitments and so on? And we take a very flexible approach to that. I think they appreciate us reaching out to them, but there's no pressure to say, you've got to start attending meetings or, your membership will be in jeopardy. You just don't do that kind of thing. It's more about creating a culture of care.
Yeah. So you have a member care committee.
We do.
And you actually call it the member care committee. I think that's fantastic.
That's right. That's the name of the committee, is the member care committee. And they are excellent at reaching out. Somebody's in the hospital, or somebody has lost a relative, somebody, whatever it may be. They're reaching out and saying, we're thinking about you, and they make the whole club aware of that. And so all the members of the club are reaching out to that person in that particular circumstance, and it's greatly appreciated.
That is fantastic. That is absolutely fantastic.
Oh, I see Linda's got her hand up.
Linda's got her hand up. No worries, Linda. Over to you.
I'll mute myself. Paul, going back to, recruiting new members, do you have members that can't make the weekly meetings or fortnightly meetings, but still want to be involved?
Absolutely. And we tell them, we're not going to take attendance. We don't necessarily expect you to be at the meeting. If you can pop in for 10 minutes, by all means do so. But there are other ways to be engaged in our club, whether it's joining a committee and helping that committee achieve their goals, or attending a fellowship event, or getting involved in a service project, or going off to a district conference, those kinds of things. So we make it very clear that it's not about attending weekly meetings. We'd love to have you there if you can make it, but your lives are busy and chaotic, and that might not be possible. So here are other ways that you can get involved and be engaged. And hopefully that relates to their goals and their experiences.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I find as well, when you've got members that are, been in the club for a while, but they're still stuck on this, they only get to a meeting every so often, or whatever the case may be, and he doesn't see what they do in the background, away from Rotary, with different projects that we have on, that he's not involved in. You know what I mean? And because he's not
Absolutely.
interested in it. So it's always, I feel, very hard when somebody's making comments about members that are time poor, they've got young children, and you know what it's like with sport and this and that and sort of type of thing, and school. They're just amazing, but they get so discouraged when they're being told, and I find that a bit hard. I find that very hard.
I think the more opportunities you have to celebrate what those people are actually doing for Rotary, tell those stories and congratulate, so-and-so. We have something called the Red Hat Award. So each week we're celebrating a Rotarian for something that they have done. And sometimes it's a matter of letting folks know, hey, you might not see them much at meetings, but here's what they're doing.
Yeah.
And it's pretty impressive and important. And so celebrate the successes, celebrate those stories, and let everybody know what they're up to.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Thank you.
Thanks, Linda, and thanks, Paul. It's picking up on that one. It's really interesting and troubling that the second biggest destroyer of Rotary clubs is unresolved conflict.
Yeah.
And that's not necessarily that's not necessarily fisticuffs. That can come down to people just being unpleasant to other people, on a fairly regular basis. And it's one of the reasons why we find there are so many past Rotarians who, when they're offered a refreshing, attractive, friendly Rotary experience, are actually reasonably keen to get back in. So, Paul, how does Kingston deal with this issue, this issue of microaggression, unresolved conflict, or whatever, because it can creep in?
It can, but I think you've got to head it off at the pass. You can't let it build. You've got to speak directly to the person who's initiating that conflict. You've got to tackle those issues. Otherwise, it can be like a cancer. It can spread throughout your club. And so, you know, I've talked about the attendance police, some of our traditional members who think that people should be attending in person at meetings. And we have spoken to them directly, and we've said, you know, full stop. You can't talk about this anymore. This is the impact that your discussions are having. So please refrain from doing so and understand that they are engaged in a variety of other ways. So you can't let it build. You've got to deal with it quickly, and you've got to make sure that they understand why it needs to change and stop.
Hey, Paul, if you ever decide to move to Australia, I've got a good club for you to join.
Well, you know what? Those issues are tough to tackle sometimes, but you know, somebody's got to bite the bullet and tackle them. Otherwise, it can really cause some grief in the club.
Yes. Thank you, Paul. And Michael has a question.
Paul, it's just to extend what you were just saying then with regards to it's not just in the membership space, it's actually those side comments and those microaggressions are the things that actually create a culture of that could be quite toxic. And so heading it off in the past, as you say, is very brave, especially with the older Rotarians that are there, and many of them aren't, I'll use the word that they use, woke. They're not as woke as the younger Rotarians that we get in place, and therefore aren't aware of actually some of the things that they may say could not is not appropriate to the members that are there. So I applaud you, but it's still tackling microaggression is still quite difficult. I know there is a great course on Rotary Learning Centre around microaggression, and I encourage everyone to have a look at it. And even having done it, I've gone and redone it a number of times because it does help to have it fresh in the back of your mind and having those upstanders in the room to be able to say, actually, that's you may have thought that was okay, but consider how that may have been received by the other person is a really good thing to do.
The most powerful thing with those microaggressions and whatever is for a community rejection of the behaviour. Protecting people is better than nothing, but having basically a community rejection of bad behaviour. Tim Blackburn has a question.
Yeah, talking on this topic, we have a sister club who had one of the core members and their family have withdrawn from their club because of these unresolved issues and got blown up publicly on the social media channels. So one of our strategies was, well, let's have a chat to that person stepping away from their club and come join our club. They've been involved with Rotary for 30 years. Still, you know, probably want to still provide service, but, you know, maybe it's time for try a different club. Is that a good strategy to apply?
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. If you're not going to address those issues and you're going to let them continue to fester, why would I stay?
The members own the club.
Sometimes there's personality clashes. You've got quite headstrong business people who are quite opinionated, and they're quite strong in their opinions and they don't change very often. They're quite steadfast in their thoughts and way things are said.
There are a lot of type A folks in Rotary who want it done their way. Well, listen, folks, I'm going to have to go. Sorry, I've got to get my girls ready to head off to school.
Before you go, Paul, I think everyone knows what happens now after we had a great presentation. So if you could all switch your microphones on, please. You ready? Let's hear Paul. Microphone on, mate. Great work there,
Thank
mate.
you, Paul.
It's been wonderful seeing you.
Fantastic. Thank you, mate.
Take care. Good luck with your membership goals and
Thanks, Paul.
strategies, and
Thank
hope
you,
you finish
Paul.
the year well.
No worries. And thank you everyone for being with us tonight.
Thank you, Kira, as well.
Thanks, Karen.
No worries.
I love
Thank
the
you
sessions.
and good night. And don't forget, we've got more membership voice stuff coming up. So
Yeehaw!
see you soon.
Awesome. Thank you.
See ya.
See you all.
Good night.
Good night, everyone.